Greetings. Today we are going to see a lecture on a very famous piece of criticism, which is Ars Poetica by Horace. Ars Poetica, the etymology goes to Latin, which means the art of poetry, and it is written in 19th BC by Horace. In this criticism, he advises the art of writing poetry and drama. And this work has exercised to a greater extent on European literature, notably French dramas, and it is taken as an excellent piece and followed by so many people, and so many imitators are there. Let me go to the poetry piece, Horace, Ars Poetica. Okay. When it comes about the biography of Horace, he was born in Venusia, which is in southeastern Italy, and his father worked as an auctioneer and he had a small land holding. And when you go on through the writing, you can find his father is normal enough to send him to school. So he attended Rome for schooling, and at the age of 19 he went to Athens for pursuing his grad. And after he joined university, there was a person, and there was a Roman writer whose name is Marcus Brutus, and he along with Horace, they joined together to conquer about Asia Minor, but they got defeated in the battle and returned back. And after returning back, you can find his situation was totally, his plight was totally onto poverty, and you can find Horace taking the position as a keeper of record in treasury, and there his abilities was recognized by Gaius Maecenas. He is also a Roman fellow, and there you can find during his tenure as record keeper in treasury, he got accustomed to write things, and he produced numerous epodes. Epodes refers to lyric poems, odes, satire and verse epistles. And when it comes to Ars Poetica, this work is dedicated to Piso family, and it is written as late as 10th BCE, and this is written in the form of epistles, and it addresses to Piso family, which we can see when you go through the verses. Okay, so you can find his art form is imitated by so many people. For example, Geoffrey of Vincennes, he copied his art form in 12th century, Pierre de Ronsard in 16th century, Nicolas Boileau in 17th century, Alexander Pope in 18th century, Byron in 19th century, and Wallace Stevens in 20th century. And after going through Ars Poetica, translators found it very difficult because it was written in dactylic hexameter. So they converted his lines into prose translation, which we are going through reading these days. So when it comes to principles in Ars Poetica, Horace understands the concept of ars, which means poem, in three ways. So the three ways are practiced mastery of the craft. When you want to undertake something, you have to know about that craft, and a systematic knowledge of theory and technique, and as a capacity of objective self-criticism. These three ways are needed in order to understand about the art of poetry. And then comes an element called decorum, which refers to discernment and the use of appropriateness. So this is what is needed: appropriateness, property, promotion and unity in arts. And according to Horace, poetry is to delight and instruct. When somebody reads it, the poetry piece should give delight as well. It should instruct morally, and this is what is called as Horatian platitude. Horace also tells that the poetry should be against purple patches, that is mistakes, marring a lot, but if it is evasive, but if it is like outlining, that doesn't issue, but the work should have a moral upliftment. Then only the other readers will imbibe that moral upliftment in their life. So he believes that poetry is to delight and instruct. Ars Poetica in a nutshell. So what he says in Ars Poetica. So first point is the poetry should material to match one's strength. So if your ability is to do this, you have to do that. You shouldn't touch about the portion which is unknown to you. It should be clear that what the person's abilities are and work stampede with that date. So he says the poet should imitate that date, the history. So only he says perish words with the age. If the author is writing during romantic age, it should embellish about that age. If it is Victorian period, it should tell about that age. So next point is expression should fit the character. So the character, when it is said, it should represent it. For example, rage armed Archilochus, okay, he cannot be presented in comic vein. A character which is serious should be serious, and there shouldn't be any comical vein, interludes which will mess up the whole work. Poetry should impart delight and transport the listener as it likes. So he says when it is read, it should impart delight and transport the listener as it likes. So only he says when it comes to character analysis, if you want me to cry, you must cry yourself. That is what I gave, empathize with the character. If you want to smile reading your passage, you should smile. If you want to wince or if you want to cry reading your passage, you should cry first. So empathizing quality should be there for a writer. And next point is the character should be the same from the beginning to end. When it comes to literature and character analysis, as we know very well, it's divided into flat and round character. Flat character means the character from the beginning to the end will be the same. There won't be any reformation, whereas round character refers to the character transformation which will take place when we see a movie or when we read about pieces. We can see the character who is very good in the beginning turning to very bad, or the vice versa. But for Horace, he says the character should be the same from the beginning to end. And he says when it comes to connectivity, there should be perfect synchrony or harmony which should be maintained in the work. The middle part of the work should be connected with the beginning and the end. So the connection should be maintained. It shouldn't be like a piece over here and the piece over there which will lead to ambiguity. So that shouldn't be there. There should be perfect connection in a work. So when it comes to play, up to previous slide he was discussing about poetry. When it comes to play, so again he says attribute to the age. Observe the characteristic of each age and attribute proper behavior to impulsive natures and years. Historical approach will help here, because if one want to know about the prose piece, they have to go about the age, or poetry or whatever it is, they have to know about the age, then the study will be easy. Action takes place on stage and narration. He says the action when it comes to play, it takes place through two modes. One is on the stage, we see, when we go and we see, it becomes the stage, or narration. When we carry out the play in classroom, it is carried out through narration. And he also says a play should comprise of 5 acts. So not more or not less. Chorus, which is the chief element which is seen during previous eras, it has to preserve its role. It shouldn't break in between the acts. So he gives an example, slender pipe. I can say it as a metaphor. Slender pipe is enough to support chorus than mega instruments. So even a pipe is enough to convey the emotion rather than trumpets or horns. So there shouldn't be any cheap intrudes in a play like mocking, chattering satires. You know what is satires, right? Satires refers to pieces, actually the etymology goes on with gods, with human and goat traits. So it is usually intruded in comic pieces, so that shouldn't be there. Satires shouldn't be there in the serious plot. Tragedy despises all chatter in light verses. So tragedy hates something when it is in light verse. Separate coarseness from refinement is needed. Horace, he says the function of the poetry, it should be like whetstone in teaching, the functions and obligation which fosters and shapes the poet. I have given you the example, the image of whetstone. It is a stone which is used for sharpening. So it should be likewise, it should act as a whetstone in teaching the function and shaping the poet. What is exact writing? Okay, this is the main important part when it comes to literature. What is exact writing? Here Horace gives his views. So you should assign appropriate qualities to each character, examining the pattern of life. Writing to provide pleasure and interest rather than trifles. So rather than free verse or something like that, I want to write, that shouldn't be. So it should provide pleasure and interest to the readers. The reader should come back and read. That is what is expected. Should be close to reality. It shouldn't take you to some utopian universe. It should be close to, or dystopian universe. It should be close to the reality. When bright places in the poem are more, he also emphasizes again and again, when there is something which is very moral, which is very interesting, blemishes won't be offended, flaws won't be taken into consideration. He stresses that a poem is like a picture and it should get into the readers and he should feel like seeing it again and again, so that the essence is attained. So he will come on to say, honor and renown came through inspired bards and their songs. Bard refers to poets. After Horace, you can find Homer and Tyrtaeus whetting many hearts for martial wars with their verses. So they took Horace as example and they carved their work following his technique, and it admired many readers. So whether the excellent poems comes from nature or by craft, when this question is posed, Horace views, as I said, it is in the form of epistles, letters. So he gives the response. Horace views that dedication and rich vein of talent leads to perfect poem. So whatever work you do, what is needed is dedication. That's what he also stresses. Dedication and rich vein of talent leads to perfect poem. Sentiment should not deceive the poem. So you shouldn't have so many sentiments. And when he refers to Quintillus, there is a Roman author called Quintillus. He says, correct this please and that. So he says, when you take him like his your poetry, he will say, after 2 or 3 vain attempts, you continue to insist you can do no better. He would tell you, delete it and put your ill-turned verses back on the anvil. Anvil is an instrument which is used to like shaping. So he will say, try your level best to make it the best. A good and wise man will rebuke verses lacking workmanship. So a good critic, a good and wise man, after going through the verses, will rebuke, will tell about the wrong things, or will tell about the flaws which are lacking workmanship. Horace concludes saying that poets should have the rights to express the faults. So it is not an issue whether it is perfect or not. After reading, when there is a flaws, so they have right, the readers and the poets have rights to express the fault so that it will be rectified. So the conclusion is, Horace concludes saying poets should have that right, let them perish. To save someone against his will is like murder. So when you write something, write it in an excellent manner, even though there is flaws, accept it and rectify it during your next writing. So thank you.